now want to be joined live to get more insight into the developing situation in Iran with UCLA political science professor Benjamin Radd this morning. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
There's obviously so many developments even this morning. I do want to dive into, though, a new CBS News poll that was released showing that 56% of Americans disapprove of the U.S. taking military action against Iran. 45% of those surveyed believe the strikes in Iran will make the United States less safe. You have Russia and China talking this morning. Your takeaways from the CBS poll and what's happening across the world?
You know, it demonstrates a interesting divide here, that here we have a country that's bombing another country, and the country that's doing the bombing, the United States, the bombing decision is not popular. Whereas the country being bombed, Iran, most of the population, or I'd say majority definitely, is in favor of a U.S. intervention. So it's sort of, it really demonstrates, I think, several things. Number one, how important this was from the perspective of the Iranians who've been suffering under the yoke of the Islamic theocracy. And secondly, the inability of the administration here to properly frame and convince and sell this conflict and sell this operation not only to the public but also to Congress as well, which ties into the war powers debate that's being held at the moment.
Absolutely. And we have gotten so many updates, and there's many aspects we could tackle this from. I do want to talk about leadership in Iran, since regime change is at really the heart of all of this. And now Iran's leaders are talking about naming Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son as the leader, which of course would upset a lot of people who thought that this was an opportunity for big change. What are your thoughts there?
Well, not only would it upset a lot of people, it's against Iran's own constitution. Its constitution has a process that not only involves how the supreme leader is selected, but how the supreme leader as a candidate is qualified to even be in that role. And Mojtaba Khamenei, the former supreme leader's son, simply does not meet those qualifications in any sense of the word. So it appears really that either the regime is running out of options of qualified candidates, or it needs somebody who sort of has a continuity from the former leadership, who could basically instill his authority and re-exert control, and give the Islamic Revolutionary Guard and other fighting elements within the country a unified central command, given how many of them were decimated and killed in the first few hours of fighting.
You know, we're hearing that NATO may have intercepted missiles going over Turkey this morning. We've also heard the U.S. Defense Secretary saying that a U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. Can you talk about just the significance of those two headlines alone?
Yeah, and what it demonstrates is the Iranians are deciding to basically bring in far and wide as many elements into this conflict, hoping that it becomes so destabilizing that the risk of even greater escalation is such that the United States and others who are in the fight would be compelled to stop, or be pressured to stop by, let's say, either Turkey, the Saudis, other Gulf states, other countries that are not directly involved in the war but that are being attacked in this way. And these are decisions probably made by the former supreme leader before he died, probably signaling, if it comes to war, if it comes to this, strike these targets, lash out everywhere, and eventually the international community will pressure the U.S. and others to stop fighting. That's probably one theory here, and would explain why they're indiscriminately, it seems, fighting, sending rockets into territories that really are not central to the conflict.
Very interesting. Okay, the U.S. military campaign against Iran, as Hegseth said this morning, is accelerating, and we're seeing that. At the same time, Congress is about to vote for there to be congressional approval needed for any more action in the war. Is that relevant at this point when it seems like everything's just moving forward?
Well, given that the president can veto this, what he's been doing, even if controversial, even if unpopular ultimately, is consistent with the War Powers Act of 1973, which gives the president up to 60 days to engage U.S. forces in combat, provided that he gives Congress notification within the first 48 hours. So the president believes he's satisfied that first part. And if within 60 days he cannot complete the mission, he then needs to seek authorization from Congress, at which point he has 30 days to wrap this up. So basically 90 days to fight a war without a formal declaration or any authorization from Congress. Clearly, Congress is dissatisfied with this and wants to strengthen the initial part of that War Powers Act that insists the president make a case before he actually commits forces.
As I insinuated at the top, Russia and China have both called for the end of this escalation. Turkey also pushing for the end to this war. Why are we not seeing Russia and China come to the aid of Iran when the three of them have been linked so closely in the past?
Well, for Russia, it's a matter of they're fully distracted in Ukraine. I mean, there's not much they can do at this point. It was Iran that was providing Shahed drones and other munitions to the Russians to use in the Ukraine theater. And so for the Russians, for them to come to the aid of Iran would then bring Russia into this conflict, which opens up a whole other front that Russia does not need, given that it's so bogged down on its on its western border. And as far as China is concerned, they're more than happy to see the U.S. and U.S. allies deplete their munitions, focus their attention away from East Asia, from Taiwan, and also observe and see how the U.S. conducts warfare of this kind. I mean, this is really a learning opportunity for China if its long-term interest is regaining Taiwan.
Okay, well, there's a lot here. Ben, we are always so appreciative that you join us. You boil it down in such a clear and concise way. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.